What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Danny the Bull, back with another live stream after one of the wildest, craziest weekends in crypto history. We had the biggest liquidation event, literally in history, bigger than FTX, bigger than anything that we've experienced before. Bitcoin was sitting at 118K and dropped all the way down to 103K in minutes. Altcoins, some big cap altcoins, dropped 75%. Billions of dollars were liquidated from the market. People were left asking themselves, is this the end? And so that's what we're here to talk about. So let's see. We got Dino in the house. Need the bull at a time like this. Let's go. Season 3, you should really check out Treble Swap on Base. I will check it out. Stevie B in the house. What's up, brother? I got my Guinness shirt on. But it was wild on Friday. Wicked all the way down to 103 and came back up to 112K in a matter of minutes. And it's the type of thing that this late in the cycle really shakes people up, because seasonality wise, right, when you talk about the number of days since the bottom, we are around that time where you can start thinking about this might be it, right? And so whenever you have an event like that that shakes up the market during this time in the market, it really puts people on edge. But we did have a nice little comeback from Bitcoin. The tag, it was driven by the tweet, or the tweet from Trump was used as an excuse, I believe, to dump the markets. Trump then 2 days later came back and said, "Just kidding, April Fools. We're going to talk to China." We're going to get into all of it. Is there enough runway for an alt season? Let's get started. But we'll start with Bitcoin at 115.6, a nice weekly close on Bitcoin. And if you look at it and zoom out, I mean, we are where we were 2 weeks ago, right? We are just up higher than where we were 2 weeks ago when we were coming out of Rectember, right? This is just to put it in perspective. And if you look at Bitcoin on the monthly, we are still green, right? We are up almost 1% still on the monthly after all of that carnage on Friday. So just to put things in perspective, it was a wild and crazy, 24 hours, but we're back to 115. I think we're still in a good position. If you look at the stock market today, S&P 500 up 1.56%, NASDAQ up 2.2%. So the show goes on and the rally continues in markets, and I expect Bitcoin to follow suit. I don't think this is the end. Typically you get liquidations like that. Liquidation events like that are scary. They flush out the market, but they could act as a reset, right? And a catalyst for the next move up and the next run up. So let's just take a look at the carnage that was ensued last week. Over $19 billion in leverage positions wiped out within 24 hours. The largest liquidation event in crypto history. More than 1.6 million traders saw their positions evaporate. The word traders there is a key one, because this didn't affect institutional money and the ETF inflows and things like that. This affected retail investors who got absolutely wrecked, who were trading on leverage and using margin. It's roughly 9 times larger than any previous single day crypto wipeout. So if there are no contagion effects, right, which sometimes could take some time to develop, but if there are no contagion effects, then it could be a healthy cleanse, right, that flushes out excessive leverage and speculation. All right. And if you ask, if go into AI and you ask it, why are liquidation events healthy for markets, they'll tell you remove excessive speculation and leverage, right? Especially in this asset class that is so high on, that is over leveraged, right? It resets market risk, it enables capital redistribution, and it can represent a system reset, okay, which despite short-term pain can cleanse the market, restore a focus on fundamentals, and strengthen its resilience for the future. So as long as Bitcoin is holding up strong and continues to hold 115 and makes a move up to 118, 120, and then gets to back to its all-time high range, as long as Bitcoin is showing strength, I think we're in a good spot for what we've been waiting for, which is alt season, right? And Ethereum is back to 4,200. And if you zoom out, doesn't look too bad on the yearly, right? When in doubt, zoom out. We are back to where we were 2 weeks ago. So, it's scary to experience it, but if you weren't trading on leverage and using margin, then you weren't affected, because my bags are almost back to where they were the day before, right? So we're climbing back up. And as long as, and it's a reminder that any form of leverage in this asset class makes you extremely vulnerable to a wick, because that's all it takes is a wick down to make your position evaporate. All right. So avoid leverage. This is a risky enough asset class as it is. But when I started the stream, I was talking about any time, we're this late in the cycle, you have to, in the back of your mind, you have to be thinking about, is this the end? All right. And so far, there's not been one end of cycle indicator that's hit. And here's the pi cycle top, which called the last 3 cycles for Bitcoin, right? Going all the way back to its Genesis cycle. And this is when the short-term moving average crosses over with the long-term moving average, right? And it means that Bitcoin's overheated. These lines are still running parallel. Bitcoin has not gotten overheated yet. So I think there is still room to go. And if you look at all of the cycle top indicators, none of them have hit yet. All right. So historically, this is around the time Q4, right? When things have finished. Historically, these cycle top indicators have also hit, right? And we haven't seen one go off yet. So scary times when the market dips like that. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. I think we'll be all right. All right. And if you look at the Bitcoin rainbow price chart indicator, which is another, chart to look at to see where we are and where we could go. If you look at the previous cycles, you notice a couple things. All right. One, the moves haven't been as parabolic, right? If you look at the first cycle, we blew way out of the range, way out of the rainbow range, right? With a parabolic move in the first cycle. Second cycle, we also blew out of the range in 2017. Third cycle, actually, this is 2017. Sorry, this was 2013. This is 2017. 2017 cycle, we went to the top of the range, to the red part of the rainbow, right? So we're in the previous 2 runs, Bitcoin exploded outside of this rainbow. In the 2017 cycle, it went to the top of the rainbow. And last cycle, it went to this yellow region, right? So this tells me a couple things. One, we've been down here, which is not overextended or overheated for the majority of this cycle, right? We've not gotten overheated yet. So that's the first thing this tells me. The second thing it tells me is that there are some diminishing returns, right? And Bitcoin's getting a little less explosive cycle over cycle. So this time around, maybe we don't get up into this. I don't think we're getting into this red area, which would put us at a $700,000 Bitcoin, right? If we got there, if we went on that type of parabolic run. If we got back to where we were last cycle, right, in this rainbow, it would put us at about a $500,000 Bitcoin, right? I don't think we're going there either. But I think it's, safe to assume that we could get into this light green area, right? If we don't get quite up here, because again, it's like the law of diminishing returns, and we get just over here in this light green area. I mean, that's, into the $150,000, $147,000, $150,000, depending on when it hits there, right? So looking at the indicators, different charts, pi cycle top, we haven't crossed over. The rainbow indicator, we're not close to being overheated yet. And all the cycle top indicators, they all suggest that we have room to go. So, again, while, it's scary to watch that what happened on Friday, we have to keep things in perspective. This is a volatile asset class, and these liquidation events are a part of the game, right? And Ben Cohen, who's called things pretty well this cycle for ETH specifically, he's called ETH pretty perfectly over the last year, brought up a good comparison in 2017. We had a very similar liquidation event in October 2017. You see it right here. October 2017 liquidation event. How do you think that felt for people? They felt like shit. I can tell you. I wasn't there, but I can tell you they were scared. Okay. And what followed? The parabolic move up. Here we are, October 2025. Another big liquidation event. What's going to follow? We don't know what's on the right of the chart, right? But if history repeats, we are, at this part of the cycle. We're at this part of the cycle. It's coming up. So, these liquidation events have happened before at this point of the cycle. And what followed in 2017 was the parabolic, right, alt season. So, you often hear the expression that markets will create max pain, right? They will seek to incur max pain. They did that on Friday, right? They liquidated billions of dollars. 1.6 million people saw their everything evaporate. Max pain, the next move for max pain is to the upside, because it's leaving all those people behind, right? So we'll see how it plays out. I see a super chat by my homie Stevie B. Great to see you keeping it Irish and the green lighting behind you and the Guinness top. Thanks for all the info. Appreciate everything you do. Brother, appreciate you. Is great. I got to meet Stevie B over in Dublin. We shared a couple pints. And I miss Guinness. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you, brother. But again, liquidation events at this time in the market happen. And everyone says, they've been saying that this cycle resembles the 2017 cycle more than the 2021 cycle. So this is another kind of, confluence event, and we'll see what happens. But I think we're still in position. The setup is still there. And I think the setup could be end of October. And I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But, I was talking about Ben Cohen, and he's kind of called ETH perfectly. And if you follow him, and he was wrong, he's been wrong, and everyone's wrong and right on some things. No one's right 100% of the time. And last cycle, he called for an elongated cycle, and that didn't play out. But this cycle, back here, when everyone was bullish, when everyone was getting bullish on ETH, he called for ETH to go back down to the $1,500 range. And it did exactly that. It went to like exactly where he called it. Then he said it would go on to all-time highs. All right, which it did go on to all-time highs. When it got to all-time highs, he then said it would drop 30%. Okay, he said it would drop down 30% and that it would most likely be a wick down. And that's exactly what happened. So shout out, props to Bnkr for getting ETH correct. He called for a wick all the way down to the 3,500, which happened on Friday. And his next call is for ETH to now go back to all-time highs, to break $5,000. So hopefully he continues to get ETH correct. But another interesting chart that he's posted and talked about is alt Bitcoin pairs. And this is interesting because you look at where we are, and this is altcoins. This is altcoins based against Bitcoin, right? So altcoin Bitcoin pairs. And you see that they've been in a downtrend for this cycle. They've been in a downtrend. And we just wicked all the way down here. Funny enough, in 2021, alt Bitcoin pairs also wicked all the way down here. And in 2017, this is exact same time in the cycle, right? This is Q4, October. 2017, same thing. Alt Bitcoin pairs wicked down. All right, so will we get the same follow through is the question, and that we'll have to wait for. But the setup is there, and I think the setup is there because again, seasonality wise, now is the time. But if you look at what catalysts could the markets use to drive things up, and everyone talks about manipulation, right? And I do think that there was some manipulation at play, and market makers and exchanges worked together to push things down on Friday and cause max pain and liquidate all the over leveraged and people using margin. I think that those things happened, but I also think manipulation happens in the other way, right? And they work to push things up. And we don't call that manipulation because we like it, and we just call it markets going up. And this is what we predicted, and this is what we thought, and that's why we're here. So we don't call it manipulation, but manipulation works both ways, right? Push prices up, they push prices down, they shake people out. And we have two events at the end of the month in October, which is historically the most bullish month for Bitcoin. Two events, and one is Trump meeting with President Xi, I think that's how you pronounce it, in South Korea, right? And this is the president of China. So they're meeting in South Korea on October 21st, I believe. Okay, so that could resolve or get a step closer to resolving the China trade wars. And not that it really matters, right? Long term, yes, but short term, we've seen the tariff headlines, right? But maybe the market makers and the exchanges use it to push markets up. And you've got the Fed, the rate cuts coming, the next Fed meeting, October 27th. So October 21st, you've got the Trump meeting with President Xi, and October 9th, I think, not 27th, October 29th, the next Fed rate meeting, and 98.9% chance now of a rate cut. So two potential catalysts coming at the end of October. So could we see Ethereum push the new all-time highs during that time? I think it's possible, right? Could we see Bitcoin making another breakout during that time? I think it's possible. All right, so keep your eyes on it. I do think, and I talked about this last stream, that we are more correlated to the stock market than ever before. Right? I think people, we kind of discount it. But this is Bitcoin versus US equities correlation again, right? I went over this last stream. This is the S&P 500 in purple. This is Bitcoin in white. Right? So you notice two things. They're both going up. And they both go down at the same times, pretty much. Especially since 2020-21 cycle. I would say is when it really, you see this dip here in the stock market, little dip here. But you see the rounding out of Bitcoin. This was the bottom, right? After 2021, stock market bottomed, stock market up, Bitcoin up. But the thing is, Bitcoin kind of leads the stock market, right? So we are correlated with the broader macro economy, right? Which I think is a good thing. That's one thing. However, it could also lead to a false sense of security at some point in the future, because if Bitcoin does lead the S&P, right, which you can see on the chart, this is what it is, right? Bitcoin dropped first, S&P dropped after. This is in 2021. Here, earlier in the year, this was January 2025. Bitcoin dropped first, S&P dropped. And then Bitcoin recovered first also. So at some point, everything's going to look fine in the stock market and Bitcoin's going to go down, right? And it could be a leading indicator that markets are going to go down. But just something to keep in mind. But I am noticing, we talk about alt season as if it's some magical thing that happens, post-halving year. But I think it's just part of the broader macro environment, my macro cycle. And I noticed this today when I was looking at the stock market today. You got the S&P up 1.5, NASDAQ up 2.2. Then look at the Russell. The Russell is up 2.8. And the Russell 2000 index is a small cap US stock market index. All right. So this makes up the smallest 2000 stocks make up the Russell 2000 index. All right. These are small caps. And if you look at the last 5 years, you're going to see a big correlation between the Russell 2000 and the total crypto market cap and the others, right? So let's look at it. 2021, you see the big rally into 2021. All right, and we all know, let's look at the others chart. The others measures all of crypto coins outside of the top 50. All right, so it's small caps. All right, we all know into 2021, these small caps went nuts, right? And then crashed out, bottomed out until October 2023, all right, and went up into 2024. And that was a great time in the markets. That was a little alt season. Some things were doing 100Xs back then, all right? That's when gaming was hot, and then AI was hot, and we were all pre-rich. Remember those times? Those are great, all right? So, again, that started October 2023. Take a look at the Russell. The Russell bled until October 2023. And then rallied into April 2024. Okay? Rallied into April 2024. Just like here, right? The others rallied into March 2024. All right, then came down. And then rallied hard again into December 2024, right after Trump's election. We saw that. Same thing here. Less of a drop for the Russell, but still a drop, but less of a drop. Kind of a drop in little sideways, rallied into 2024. So altcoins are very much correlated with small cap stocks also, right? And it just so happens that in post-election years, small cap stocks outperform the S&P 500. And that is something that's been going on and I looked it up. And these are election years, right? 26. So here, the Russell 2000 has outperformed the S&P 500 during the 12 months following 5 of the last 6 presidential elections, 83% of the time, right? So we are in a year following the presidential election. We ascribe everything to the halving in crypto, right? But Satoshi, just coincidentally or not, lined up the halving with the election year. All right. And that's how it's going to fall every 4 years, because that's when US elections take place, every 4 years. All right. So what typically happens is the stock market performs very well in the year after an election, renewed optimism, whatever you want to call it, a reset, debt refinancing, whatever it is. All right. And towards the end of that, small caps outperform. Okay. And this is the return of the Russell compared to the S&P. They outperform 83% of the time. And if you look at the Russell, just like our alts, bottomed in April and were hit hard, right? We're hit hard, harder than the S&P, harder than the NASDAQ. And then now they've been on a tear and they're just at previous all-time highs, right? The Russell 2000 is right at a breakout point. And guess what else is at a breakout point? The total crypto chart. This is total crypto sitting at 3.9 trillion, also at this resistance of previous all-time highs. All right, so Friday was scary. Those liquidation events are nuts. But when you zoom out, you see that we are right on the brink of a breakout still. And as long as Bitcoin remains strong and the total market cap is in this range, it's only a matter of time before we break out. All right. And then when that happens, that typically triggers our alt season. And we will see how it plays out. But when you put it in perspective and realize that we are more correlated than we think, right? It's not just altcoins, it's risk assets, right? And the Russell is going to benefit as well from the rate cuts and from the current environment, the easing environment that we're heading into. So all very interesting to think of and to put it in context and perspective. I do think that we have more to go. Let's jump back in the chat. Kumo in the house. What's up, brother? I saw Kumo this week. I went to the Devve party on Friday night. Got to see Kumo for this, I think, the second time. Good seeing you, brother. Raven in the house. What's good? B-dubs. Let's see. If we get a run this year, could we see a double top into next year when the new Fed chair comes in? And that's something that's difficult to consider. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know what's going to happen. Raoul Paul thinks that we that the 4-year cycle is turning into a 5-year cycle because the debt financing cycle was pushed out a year. All right. So, and you do have the new Fed chair coming in next year. And with that, you're going to have perhaps, bigger rate cuts, maybe easing, maybe the money printing. So I don't know. And I'm not trying to think about that right now. It's in the back of my head, but right now I'm just focused on, it's kind of like driving a car at night and the headlights are on. You can only see what's kind of in front of you. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. Were you able to take advantage of the dips? Oh, that's my son's calling me. Let me text my son. Yeah, I did. I did add, and I'll tell you what I added in a bit. All right. I did add some stuff. Added to some Mcade, which is held up. Anytime Mcade gets down here at this 1 cent level, actually I bought this right before Yeah. Anytime it gets down here, I bought this before the dip actually. Um, that's a good buy zone for Mcade historically. It's done well. I bought some more Bnkr and I bought more DRB and I added a little Devve also. Before this run finish, I'm finished. And a lot of people are feeling this way, man. But it's hard. I would not get shaken out in the last quarter, right? You came this. The way I look at it is I came this far. I didn't come this far to come this far, and my overall thesis has not changed. And as long as we are in a structural bull market and Bitcoin the structure is intact, which it is, then the setup is there. We've yet to see ETH break out this cycle, right? We still have, and people ask, where will the money come from, right? Retail's not here. Where will the money come from? The money will come from stables. This is USDT dominance. It's pretty much at a high, right? When you get into this zone right here, this is bear market high. But this measures how many stable coins are on the sidelines. Almost 5% of the total market cap of crypto is sidelined. All right, so you're talking about 300 billion, more than $250 billion that's sitting on the sidelines. I think once the signal is sent, once Bitcoin sends, and more importantly, once Ethereum sends, I think you're going to see a lot of those stables come off the sidelines, and that's going to trigger our alt season, right? And then the people who we consider retail, the normies that don't really play in their sandbox, those people will then jump in at near all-time highs to all-time highs. That's when they're buying. Normies were buying XRP at $3, $2.50. That's when they were buying. Normies were buying Doge last cycle at 50 cents when Elon was on SNL. That's when they were buying. Everyone wanted to buy Doge. People wanted to buy SafeMoon when it went to a $10 billion market cap and $15 billion market cap. And then they bought on the way down. That's called exit liquidity. That's when they enter. Total market cap of others is only $280 billion. Keep this in mind. The total market cap of others, which is all altcoins outside of the top 50, is only $280 billion. There's currently about 200, let's see how much is sitting in Tether. 180 billion sitting in Tether, 75 billion sitting in USDC, 250 billion sitting in stables. Okay, 250 billion sitting in stables, 280 billion in all small caps. What happens if 20% comes in? You don't need, people I think overcomplicate things. You don't need a ton of money to flood into the system to send these low liquidity coins. Right? So the setup is there. The money is in the system. It's just a matter of rotation and signals, I think. All right. And I think we're at that time in the market when these things happen. And it's a matter of patience now. And it's the same thing in the broader markets. Okay. This is the Russell. And here is total. It's the same. So I expect both to go up. A lot of retail are holding altcoins, waiting for new retail. Feel like there are too many JEETs with PTSD to have alt season we expect. And that's a compelling counter argument, right? Is that people have PTSD and are going to sell and not let pumps happen. We'll see, but I think that once euphoria kicks in and the narrative changes, people will that PTSD will evaporate, and they'll think that their bias was confirmed. Right? Once people start talking about we are heading into 2026, which is already a strong narrative, and I don't know, maybe we head into 2026. But when people, the ISM, which is, something that really correlates well with, when you look at the ISM, which is measures the business cycle, measured against Bitcoin, they're very tightly correlated, right, on chart. So when people start thinking about this, and then the ISM is right now, and this is an older chart, right? Right now the ISM is at 49.1. 50 is expansionary. We're just edging up towards expansion. So if the idea is we're getting rate cuts and we're getting easing, and the ISM is going to shoot up to 55 or so, that's a compelling argument for this cycle extending. Whether or not that happens, I don't know, but I think it's important that people think that it could, because last cycle in 2021, the reason people were buying the top was because people thought this time was different and we're going to have an elongated cycle. This party's going on, right? And I think it's important for people to believe that we're going into 2026. And I think that a lot of people believe that. I put out a poll on X, and it's a small sample size, right? Because I have a small following. I don't know how many people responded, but the majority of people said they think we're going into 2026. So I think that narrative and that expectation is going to grow as we move on into this cycle, right? And maybe we do. I don't know. Target for ETH. So my target for ETH has been 6 to 7K. I've always thought it could go to 7K this cycle, which I want to say, 8.5, 8,000 is about a $1 trillion market cap. So I think like just short of $1 trillion, which is a big number psychologically. I think we can go to 7. Could go 8. Conceivably, if it was like a really strong market, could you get to a 10K ETH? It's possible, but my feeling has always been 7K. But we will see how it goes. In the meantime, when the other thing that people question, and B-Dubs DM me today, I thought it was a good question. His question was, do we have enough runway for alts to 10x from here or 20x? It feels like we don't, because it's October. We do. It's time is, we're pushing up against it. But if you go back to last cycle, Sandbox was 75 cents on October 22nd. Okay, 75 cents on October 22nd. On November 26th, it was $7. So it did a 10x in 4 weeks. Last cycle, again, Mana, which was in the same category, right? Metaverse, 76 cents to $5, 8x. Another small cap, Wilder World, October 12th, 2021, $1.49. November 23rd, $6.38. So from 10/12 to November 23rd, 5 weeks, 5x. All right, so a couple takeaways. The biggest gains come in the shortest amount of time. Okay. We have time for the market to go parabolic. We have time. It'll happen fast. That's one. Two, not everything will 10x, right, from where they are now. Wilder World last cycle started at, 24 cents, 8 cents, or, it was 8 cents at one point. Then it was 24 cents. It shot up to 260, came all the way back down to 92 cents, right? At this point in the cycle, it was about $1.80 and did a 5x. So a couple takeaways. One, we have time, right, to get a really strong alt rally. We have time for things to, go nuts. Two, not everything is going to 100x or even 10x. Believe it or not, some of these coins have already made big moves, right? And even something like Mcade, yeah, if you bought Mcade, if you bought the top, or if you bought up here, it hurts. The majority of my buying was down, and it was 0.004, double to 1 cent. All right, so between 0.004 to 1 cent. So my 0.004 buys are up, a couple 100% right now. Not everything is going to 100x or even 10x. And the moves will be fast. All right. So again, I'm going to pull up one of those charts. So for, my takeaway is I'm not trying to time this up here. We saw what happened on Friday. As quickly as this market gives you something, it will take it away from you. It's hyper volatile, with the most hyper volatile president in the United States at the helm, right? So at any time, you could get 4 weeks of crazy, 5 weeks, even longer, of a crazy upside. And at any time, you could then get a catastrophic dump, right? And if you look at November 26th was the peak. All right, even till, all right, give it 2 months later, people thought this was going into 2022 because everything was euphoric. Everything was going nuts back then. It had dropped 50%. Okay, within weeks, dropped 50%. And the thing is, it doesn't drop straight down. So it drops and then comes back up. And your feeling is we're going back to new all-time highs, right? It's not a straight line. So to, I try to make things less complicated. My plan is just to sell on the way up a little bit here and there, right? And not try to time the top. We do have enough room and enough runway. And hopefully it lasts longer. Because again, the run in 2023 into 2024, that was a nice run. And that wasn't even, let me pull up. Let's pull up, I know like Nakamoto Games was running. Oh, let's pull up Relio Network, which I'm still holding. Look at Rio. So this run, there were like 2 legs to this. All right, so this was October 2023. And we ran up from 20 cents, 15 cents October 19th to 60 cents, a 4x. But then the market kept going into April, right? So it did a clean, 10x, more than a 10x. This actually went to $3, just under $3, Rio, right? So it did a clean 10x, but this was all over a longer period of time, 2023 into 2024. Right? Back in 2021, end of the cycle, parabolic move up. 2023 into 2024, it was, that was 4 months of up. up, consolidation, up. So we'll see how it plays out. Historically, end of the cycle has been more of the parabolic, more of the parabolic run-ups. And we'll see how it plays out. I would much prefer this type of thing, right? Where you have more time, and maybe if the 2026 theory plays out, maybe we do get something like that. It's going to be interesting to watch as we head into the end of the year. What do the top cycle topic indicators look like? Where is Bitcoin in the rainbow indicator? It's going to be interesting to see. So we have to just take all the information that we have and figure it out. And, to me, when you look at all the information, you look at where we are relative to the stock market, where the alts are compared to the Russell 2000 small cap stocks, we're okay. All right, we're still in position. The setup is still there. When in doubt, zoom out and look at the yearly. Bitcoin yearly looks good. All right, I would start worrying if Bitcoin dropped below like 100K. That would be a signal that the structure is broken. So I was oddly calm on Friday. All right, I wasn't freaking out. I didn't have leverage. I didn't get liquidated. I knew I was going to hang out with my homie Kumo that night, right? And so I wasn't freaking out because I ground myself by asking, is the setup still there, or have we broken structure? And as long as we're not breaking structure, then it's volatility. And this is towards the end of bull markets, you can get even more volatile, right? Because the shakeouts are crazy. So those are my thoughts. If you have any questions, the quiet chat today, drop them in, or anything you guys want to chat about. But my buys, I did add more Devve. And Devve's just been going sideways for months, right? This is like 6 months of Devve staying in this range pretty much, and just waiting for the partnership announcement. And if it meets expectations, that could coincide with, the parabolic part of the market. Devve could do really well. If it disappoints, we'll see what happens, right? But the setup is there for Devve. I like the base that it's built out. Strong holders, strong people who believe, holding this 40-cent level. It barely wicks down below it. You get 38 cents here and there. I think it wicked to 38 on Friday. I added some more at 42 cents. I've added more Bnkr and DRB. These are kind of like my high conviction plays right now. DRB is a meme coin, but it's got one that is very, I think, topical, relevant, and crypto. It's a very crypto story. Two AI agents create a meme coin. Grok and Bnkr work together to create a meme coin. Grok is the dev. Grok can't sell his bags on his own. He can't dump. So very, very good narrative. $1 million in trading fees in Grok's wallet, which is absolutely sick. $8 million market cap. I added a lot here from this, quad 4 level through here. I've added a lot of DRB, and I added a bunch of Bnkr. And Bnkr was, got some FUD last week because right before that liquidation event, which was Thursday night, and I was in the city Thursday night at another party, hung out with the Candy Digital marketing lead, Shay. Bnkr was kicked off of X and Telegram for 24 hours. Got back on, right? So it sold off hard. And then the liquidation thing happened. So Bnkr was hit hard, went down to 00038. So I added Bnkr down at 00038, 0004. It's starting to recover. I think the chart looks, it's had a sell-off since the Coinbase listing, but the chart is, for a crypto chart, this is a clean chart. Strong chart. Base app coming out. And the other catalyst I think that's coming later this year, maybe later this year, is a Base token, right? So Base is exploring, and it even says so. If you look at Base's X account, this is interesting, right? Look at Base right here. Base is beginning to explore a network token, right? Why is Base exploring a network token? It's because they want to bring liquidity to the Base ecosystem. Just like Solana, when Solana rallies, you see all Solana meme coins and a lot of activity in Solana projects because liquidity flows through the token. They realize this. I think there will be a Base token. I think it'll be airdropped to people who are on-chain and have a history of on-chain activity. And if there is a Base token airdrop, I think a lot of Base projects are going to do well, right? That's Mcade, that's Bnkr, DRB, and also, yes, potentially Chuck. I don't know what I expect. It's hard for me. I don't make predictions or I have expectations, right? Especially for something I'm so closely tied to. But I think Chuck could absolutely run again. It's held up well relative, right, to the market. So Chuck bottomed out at 0004. And it rallied. This was a nice rally all the way up to 002 almost, right? 0018. It's come back down. But, ETH has dragged it down also. And ETH will drag it up. And that's another thing to consider when, a catalyst, it feels like alt season won't happen. But if ETH goes to 8K, everything that's tied to ETH automatically goes up because that's how liquidity pools work. So when ETH goes up, Chuck goes up because Chuck is paired with Ethereum. And everything that's paired with Solana goes up when Solana goes up, right? So these are just fundamental things that people should know. I'm hoping, Chuck has been around now. It's an OG-based meme coin, been around for a year and a half. So a strong community. And I notice when Base starts moving and when money flows in, that there are people who trade Base meme coins and they come and buy Chuck. I've noticed it, right? I see, I saw a wallet that had Miggles last week, bought $3,000 worth of Chuck. So I think it's a matter of liquidity coming into the market and especially flowing into meme coins and more speculative plays. And I do think that if there is a Base meme, another Base meme run, the proven tokens that have been here since day one stand a chance of doing well. So I don't have an expectation, but I think it could do well. Let me know if there are any other questions. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Take one last look here. Bitcoin at 115.8. So looking good. Another close, daily close should be, right now it's in the green. S&P in the green today, NASDAQ in the green. Everyone's shaking off the Trump China tweet. And again, catalyst coming end of the month. So stay strong. It's been rough, but we're heading into that time of the year where things could get interesting. Thanks for spending an hour with me. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.